Hello, welcome. Bildaron here, and we have the next part of the Flash Nitro Expert series. And today we are going to explore how to play the heads-up small blind. And heads-up small blind is the position where you normally have the highest win rate, except from the button. And it is also the position where you have to be the most flexible at. Very, very interesting position. And I think there are a lot of differences and different play styles overall. But let's explore first the GTO strategies. And what you will see is that people short, especially short, will play totally non-GTO-ish. And this even up to the highest stakes. Even on the highest stakes, people don't really play the big blind as they should in the Nitros. So we'll discover what the differences are and like population stats. And then we try to adapt to different hearts from our opponents. Let's start with the heads up, small blind and big blind. And today we will do it with 8 big blinds deep and with 7 big blinds deep. Three-way, when you analyze for Nitro's Flash, I would always do 15, 14, 13 big blinds, maybe 12. But when you are heads up, most of the magic is happening at around like 6 to 10. So I like to have decently good ranges for like 8 big blinds, 7 big blinds, etc. At like 6 big blinds, like there's less work to do because there's just a lot of open jamming going on, right? So the top range and bottom range that you're limping is just getting narrower and narrower, so you are not playing these as often. But still, so this is our strategy from the small blind, and you see we are already open jamming a lot. So we'll open jamming all of the offsuited ace X's, king X's at 100% frequency, and we also already open jam a lot of the suited ones. So our strategies, we are open jamming like bad playability hands, everything that is like profitable, and we have a polar limping strategy. It sounds kind of weird, but yeah, it is. Right, so we have the top suited range and hands that have very good playability post-flop, right? So these hands flop very well, they play very well post-flop, and when our opponents are going all in, we can call. And people think that, for example, hands like Jack 9 suited, Jack 8 suited, 10 8 suited, 10 9 suited, 9 8 suited, these are like traps, but they are not really traps. It is the same as like three-way small blind versus big blind. When we have like 12, 13, 14 big blinds, we are going to min raise these hands and call with the all-in. But the main reason is they play so well post-flop. That's why we limp. And when we play post-flop, that's nice. So we can play this hand. And we are dominating our opponent, and we will get in a lot of positive setups with these type of hands. But if we are getting jammed, we kind of have to call because we have the odds. But these are not like fist pump snap calls and we are dominating our opponent's range. These are just like good enough to call. And another reason for limping these kind of hands is that we are protecting our limping range a little bit, because these hands will call with the non-all-in size and with all non-all-in sizes, also with the big ones. So these hands are pretty powerful for balancing the limping range as well. And for our bottom range, we have quite a lot of hands that are around zero equity, and a couple of these hands are not profitable open jams. For example, at 8 big blinds, you can't profitably open jam Queen Deuce. Queen Deuce is for 7 big blinds. Queen 3 is for 7.5 big blinds, and Queen 4 is for 7.9 big blinds. So if you have 8 big blinds, Queen Deuce to Queen 4, if you would play pure Nash, then this would be false. However, we are putting, we have like these kind of traps, so we are protecting our range a little bit just to maximize our VPIP that we can play with our opponents. So that's like the theory. It is always like in wide range games, we always try to maximize our VPIP, like hands that we can play profitably. profitably post-flop. So we'll put these hands into limps, and then the very marginal open jams, for example, like Queen 5 off, you can open jam up to 8.9, but the EV is just 0.08. And like Jack 7, 10 7, 9 7, they are all profitable open jams as well. Same for like 10 5 suited, 10 4 suited, Jack 3, Jack deuce, Queen deuce suited. These are profitable open jams, but they are kind of marginal. So we put these kind of hands still into the limp and the fold with all in. Like the Jack 7, 10 7, 9 7, they call with the non-all-in, like with the small size, but fold with big size. And yeah, so that's basically the strategy we are playing. And with this strategy, our opponent, like the big blind, is going kind of nuts, right? So he's isolating a lot, and he's using different sizings. But one sizing that is like the not getting used so often is actually the ISO all-in at 8 big blinds. Like GTO wise, you should ISO all-in only in around 16.7%. And then you have a mix of 2.5x raises and 3.5x raises. However, at 8 big blinds, 3.5x is almost our entire stack. So all of these hands will 3x, 3.5x and call. So they are basically all-ins, but our opponent has still the possibility to call. And for adding all of these hands into our big raise, we can add these hands here as bluffs, right? So 8-3, 8 deuce, 7 deuce, 6 deuce, 3 deuce, 10-4, 10-3. These are our only folds. So our fold with limp jam is around like 15% at this stack after we raise big. Even a hand like 10-7, 8-7, or 6-7 are strong enough to call with the limp jam. So these are the only hands we are folding. And then there are a lot of like small ISOs, and small ISOs mainly with the suited part and with our pocket pairs. So we want to have very, very good playability. You won't ever see an ace king, ace 10, ace jack, ace queen off ISO non-all-in. Like the only hand we want to ISO non-all-in is like king queen off at some frequency, queen jack and queen 10. And for our checking range, like how does our checking range looks like? It is like the medium and bottom range. However, from the bottom range, we are also isolating quite a bit. And we have a lot of suited hands. So we are not ISO jamming or isolating GTO-wise these suited hands here. Even though they are all profitable. Like if you take a look at the EVs, like 0.54 is for the check back, and the ISO all-in will have almost the same EV here with the ISO jams. So in a vacuum, most of these hands would be profitable ISO jams versus many opponents, but we just take a look now at the GTO ranges. So a lot of suited hands, a couple of these here as well. I don't know if these are necessary or not. A couple of queen jacks, queen tens, jack tens. These hands we want to check, like they play very well post flop, and they don't really make sense too much to ISO. We don't really accomplish too much with this, like with the 10-8, 9-8, 10-9. But we still really want to ISO these kind of hands, just to like for a couple of reasons. First, we want to balance our strong hands, right? Always when we have value hands, we want to have bluffs, and these are our bluffs. And additional to that, we are also strengthening our post-flop range, because if we would check back all of these, we would have a pretty weak post-flop range with a lot of very weak hands, and we would have insanely high fold with c-bets as well. So this is how we want to play. And yeah, like maybe a little spoiler for next week, I really like this strategy. Like this is your opponents won't really know what you are up to. Like they are not really studying these kind of sports, or maybe I have the feeling that most players are just like in stables, and they all teach just to go all in all the time, right? So this is how our opponents play. By the way, yeah, like let's not spoil that too much. Okay, so now let's come to the population. And so this is for the reg. population. This is for the population of recreationals. I just called them fish for simplicity reasons. And you see here, there's a lot of red. There's a lot of red, and it looks very, very aggressive, right? It looks very aggressive, and it is. Like, it feels very aggressive, these numbers here. And especially 0 to 5, you see like 70%. So under 5 per limp, you are getting jammed like all day long. This, by the way, like winner max and stars together, mainly 10 to 50s, like 10s, 25s, 50, not so many 10s, like 25s, 50s. Mainly 25s, like 25 stars, 25s, winner marks. But I think this is like the level where a lot of regulars just have like more or less the same skill level than as the 50s, as a lot of 50s players as well. Like you have quite a lot of competition. The players are like okay-ish. Like a lot of players also mix, for example, and you have also a couple of high stakes players who sometimes play with 25 flashes or nitros. Okay, so but 43, 46, 47, 49 is still a little bit under the GTO frequencies, right? A little bit under the GTO frequencies. But what you see is that there's no non-all-in raising going on, like not at all, like 7 to 9, it's 9.2, and iso-all-in is 38. And just let's go back here. Non-all-in, you would need to put these together because I have like 2x to 4x. So it's 10, 20, 30, it's around 33, 34%. So you would need 34% non-all-in ISO and 16% all-in ISO. But in reality, it's just 9.2% non-all-in ISO and 38% ISO all-in. And you have this all over the place. Like they are putting the non-all-in ISO into the all-in ISO. And for the recreationals, it's more or less the same, with the difference that they are isolating less. And this is the sample for every player up to 150 hands. So you will have a couple of regulars in it here as well. So I think if you just pick the recreationals, then it's probably even tighter. Even tighter, it will be around like maybe here 30, 34, 32%. Even 5 to 7, it's like it's under 40. And 0 to 5, there are definitely opponents you can still play at like 4 to 5 big blinds. With the limping and c-betting strategy. And you see here again, there's really not much non-all-in raising going on, a lot of all-in raising going on. Good, so let's sum it up here again. Moving the non-all-in ISO into the all-in ISO and the recreational as well. Overall too low ISO, and here it is like kind of GTO-ish, it's just like 3-4 percentages under that. And for the all-in numbers, like I haven't put them here anyway, anywhere, but they overfold a little bit here for the 7 to 9. 7 to 9 is like 59, and GTO-wise, it's just like 4 or 5%, but this can make a difference. Like if you play around with the HRC, like 4 or 5% overfolding, it's just the combo here, combo there, and it's already changing your EVs quite a bit. That is even more extreme for recreational. So you see 62%, it's like already like 7 percentage points too much folding, and 5 to 7% as well. Like this is quite big, like 54%, and in comparison it should be 45 or something. So again, like 8-9 percentage points to too many folds. And 0 to 5, you also see 32% instead of 23%, and 23% is quite accurate. So as well, like 8-9% overfolding here, 0 to 5. So you will get called very, very often, but our opponents are also overfolding. I would highly recommend because you will have your own pool, take these kind of stats, filter for recreationals, and then take a look at these folds versus all-ins, and then do the HRC work, take the look at the differences, and then you might open jam a couple of hands that maybe you use to limp at the moment. We are not focusing too much on that today, but just as a hint how to improve your win rate here as well, quite a lot. Okay, so these for the population stats. And now we'll go through one example of a reg, and I will do this example first. Okay, so I'll do this example how we should adapt with this opponent, and after that, we'll do it together. Like I put 3 other hearts in here, and then we will try to make some adaptations with these kind of players here. Okay, so here you see that sample size is still like relatively low, but this is already 8,000 hands of them or something overall, or like 4,000. Like this is a relatively big heart, like an opponent I play quite regularly, and to see that at some stack depth, he has around like 50%, and sometimes he's still a little bit lower, right? So here, for example, like 38, 42, still feels very aggressive. Like this player feels very aggressive. You are getting a lot of ISO jams, but it is still not too heavily in comparison to the GTO world. But what you also see post-flop, like he's folding a shit ton of hands, like 59%. That's a lot. So my guess would be that too many hands that might also be checkbacks, for example, like Queen Jack, Queen 10, Jack 10, a couple of Queen Jack suited, Jack 10 suited are not in his range, and he's not making non-all-in ISOs, right? He's not making non-all-in ISOs. What does this mean? Like this is a very big correlation. He's not ISOing these hands non-all-in at some frequency. He's also not ISO jamming them. Like these ISO jams are mainly value hands, right? So king highs, deuces, and 8-7 off. So no non-all-in ISOs with these hands means that his range post-flop is weaker. He has a lot of like 10-4s, 9-3s, etc. And then we'll see bet, and he'll just fold a ton. He's also not check raising too much, because we are short. Keep that in mind. Like in flashes, we are playing a lot of short game, and there you can just check jam a couple of hands like pretty short and check raise more for value, etc., etc. So check raising frequency of 50% in the regular game might be like decent and quite aggressive, like decently aggressive. Here it is not really so aggressive. Very important point here is what kind of hands is our opponent ISOing, because we won't have the luxury of these sample size very often. However, we can make the same conclusions. Just by seeing showdowns. And here are a couple of hands that give us these conclusions. And I'll go to the next slide already, where I summed it up a little bit. So here, King 10 suited is a clear non-all-in ISO for value. King 3 suited is a clear check back. King 9 off is like an ISO. I mean, you can check it back. You can go ISO all in. You can also non all in and call and check back. Like this is like mixing a little bit. But if you would have some like King 10, King Jack, Ace Jack type of hands in the ISO all in, sorry, that already means that he is just ISO all in hands that are value non-all-in raises, right? And King 3 suited means that these ISO all-ins, if he will have more of these, that means that he's not checking these back, right? So he's not checking these back, then he's probably not checking back Queen 7 suited, and then his range is even weaker, right? So here you see again the nice correlation. So people will like fuck up their post-flop, their post-flop playability with all of these ISO jams if you are playing like this all day long. And so this 50% range, or like 40 to 50% range, in comparison to GTO, is not, let's go back very quickly, it's not this balanced 50%. It is a top 50%. It is these hands ISO all in, these hands ISO all in, and these hands ISO all in, right? And these hands check and these hands check. So this is the strategy. These are the top 50%. Maybe a couple of like queen deuce off will be in your opponent's range, but these are GTO ISOs, right? Queen deuce, queen three, these type of hands will ISO. Maybe a 7-4 suited, but these are pretty decent hands and have a relatively high EV. Here and there, you will see a player who might do this also with an 8-3 off if you are like too extreme. But overall, you will see this all over the place, that people are just ISO jamming. I always call them the lazy ISO jams. And this is the main reason why people are doing it, is they are mass tabling, right? So they play 8 tables, 9 tables, 10 tables, and they just eyes all in. They simplify their strategy, but they also simplify their chip EV, like in the long run. And I'm really not surprised when people are grinding these kind of nitros with like, I can't now tell any numbers, but with very, very marginal win rates. And then you need to play like 12 tables to have a decent hourly. However, I think that actually you with like 6 tables, you can play pretty decently and pretty good, and your win rate will be so much higher that you will probably do more than a lot of the 12 tabling guys who have like a solid win rate. And you will have also the ability to improve a little bit better and a little bit faster, because you can implement things. Try implement things playing 12 tables or 10 tables. It's not really happening, because you don't even see showdowns when you're playing stack, for example, right? So I think the progress will also be a little bit slower. Yeah, post-flop, this is, I'll just call him honest, right? Because you see fold with c-bet is 59%, then you have a 24% probe in correlation with a 76% fold with delay, right? So he's not probing. If he's probing, it's value, because if he's checking, he's folding to a delay. Probe, that means like this is a very, very important correlation. If the fold with delay is high and the probe is low, the probe has to be very value heavy. With value heavy, I mean pairs and draws. Like that's all. And probably not even mid pairs, like no like merged betting. It will be like polar strong, or like, I don't know if there's a word for that, but just the very strong hands, or like draws they can probably even stack off. And like check bet also only 17%. That means they're not really paying attention. Like if they don't have a hand they like, they just check to the river. So GTO-ish ISO frequency, I would probably say it's a little bit lower than that. Very low non-all-in ISO, very high all-in ISO, and you see these hands at 8 BBs, they shouldn't be in there. Okay, so how would I personally adapt to that? There are a couple of things that you can do, and so now let's compare. Like this is the GTO range, and this is how I would probably actually play with this opponent, just to make it a little bit more simple, just to simplify it a little bit. So let's start with a couple of parts. So you see here, for example, these are open jams. I would probably put these kind of hands into limbs, and there's one reason. Our opponent is going all in, right? A hand like King 8 suited, for example, if I go all in at 8 big blinds, even though King deuce, King 3 are calls Nash-wise, they'll probably fold. But they'll ice all in 100% of the time with these hands. So I want to keep them in. And post-flop, it is very, very easy to play, right? They are very honest and straightforward. And so that's also one of the reasons why we can actually add these kind of hands into our range. So they will just go all in a lot, and we'll give them the opportunity to do so. Where with limping these hands, we're not really losing too much post-flop, because it will be so easy to play, and we'll just c-bet and take down the pot most of the time, or we'll just check back, and we can even get our hands to showdown. They are not going for a check bet. They are not probing. They fold to delays. So it will be very, very easy to play post-flop, and we're not losing EV with limping these kind of hands. If you take a look at the GTO EVs, the EVs of a limp and all-in are similar. They are all 2.01, 1.9, 1.77 each. And when our opponent is not going for the non-all-in ISO, that's not really that doesn't really matter too much. However, they are just they're just ISO all in, also with all of these hands, with the suited queen axis, maybe with a couple of offsuited queen axis here, etc., etc. So these hands will make pretty decent, will get pretty decent traps. However, what I would do as well, and this is not a must, but I think this is actually a pretty decent exploit, to put these hands that are normally limbs and put them into this range, right? So we put a couple of limbs here, offsuited ones, and put them away from here. What is happening here? Like these hands, they actually benefit from folding out king deuce, king three, queen deuce, etc., because these hands have over 50% equity with us, right? If they open jam them all the time, and also I mean the suited ones are probably calling, but maybe we are folding out like a queen. What is folding at this stack? That's like a queen four, queen three, queen deuce suited, etc. So we are folding out a couple of better hands, and they are playing well post flop, and we are still playing post flop 50% of the time. However, we are not playing the ISO pots in position, and these hands are very valuable to play these to protect our limping range, to be able to call the big ISOs, to call the small ISOs, etc. We don't need to do that, right? We don't need to do that. So these hands lose a little bit of the post flop power, and therefore I think just open jamming these hands will have a pretty good EV. But again, like that's not really a must. But with this player, I would probably do that. And then I would open jam Jack 3 suited, because this is a profitable open jam, and this would be again a hand we call with the normal in ISO. But I think I would just open jam the queen 3 suited and the queen 2 suited. They have decent EVs, like 0.1 is definitely good. However, I would also probably make it a little bit dependent on the blind size, but we'll come to that, right? Especially with the queen deuce, I made an example. However, now let's come to these hands. I would still not open jam these hands, right? And I think this is one of the common mistakes, and I also put it in one of the common mistakes. Like if you see a HUD like this, people start to over-adapt a little bit, and then they are playing way too low of a VPIP. They are cutting too many hands off, right? So here, even though he's playing around like 45% ISO or 44%, 45% ISO, we can still play almost all the hands, right? I might cut the very bad ones, like Jack 4, Jack 5, maybe some of these. I'm cutting like 2, 3, 4% of my VPIP, and it doesn't even has to be, because our opponent is still under ISOing versus the GTO range. And I see a lot of players start open jamming, like Jack 7 off, 10-7 off, 9-7 off versus these players. This is a little bit of an over-adaptation, because GTO-wise, this is a limp, even versus a player who is ISOing 52% of the time, right? And therefore, I think these probably should go into the limp. Jack 7 is kind of close, because Jack 7 off is calling with a 2.5x ISO. 9-7, I think is kind of borderline. So Jack 7 might go into a jam. Like I said, it's like kind of close. Okay, so that's the range. If you have a question to that, then you can write it in the chat, and we'll answer it afterwards. Okay, yeah, you see a couple of open jams, like 10-5 suited, 9-5 suited, and these I would just put it at like 100% frequency, like no normal and ISOing going on, and then I kind of like to put these into the open jams.